guys, it's Fee, and I'm here to do an update. Those of you who are connected to my Facebook know what I'm about to say, but I'm doing this so that I can give a more detailed description of what has happened and to update those of you who are not attached to my Facebook. And I also want to document this and everything that goes along with this journey. So, you can probably guess this update is not going to be a happy one. I'm going to put a little disclaimer here right in front that I am going to do my best to have this particular video just be about what happened and where we're going from here. And I'm going to do my best to leave emotion out of this one, because if I don't, it's going to be like 3 hours long. And I think I'm going to do a separate video, possibly following this one up. I may even record it tonight. A separate video on the emotions that are running through my head, because there's a lot of them up there, and they're very confusing. And maybe I just need to let them out. Okay, so if you haven't already guessed it, I am no longer pregnant. So let me start from the beginning. Last I left you guys on here, I was on bed rest. They had found an SCH, or a, hopefully I'm going to pronounce this correct, subchorionic hematoma, a hemorrhage, in my uterus, which is kind of like a pocket of blood between the uterine wall and the placenta, and the sac. And it was causing some pretty scary stuff to happen in my last video. I won't get too much into that because there's a pretty good description in the last video if you're interested. If you haven't seen it or are not remembering what I'm talking about. But it was a pretty scary weekend. And we went in and did an ultrasound that Monday, expecting the worst, and we got a heartbeat. We got a heartbeat and an embryo that for the most part was just about growing on time. And that was the last I left you. That was, and I've got my phone here because the days have kind of melded together. That was Monday, June 9th. And my next appointment was supposed to be 8 days later, on Tuesday, June 17th. And those 8 days, I had started to believe that everything was going to be okay. Because despite the crazy, crazy bleeding and clots and scary, scary stuff that was landing in my toilet bowl, after that one occurrence, and after them going in and seeing that the little bean looked okay, I didn't have one single drop, nothing, for 9 days. 8 days, I'm sorry, for 8 days. Those following 8 days, there wasn't a drop, not a speck, nothing on the toilet paper. And I was starting to believe that, you know what, this is going to be all right. Either the hemorrhage has worked itself out and it's not going to cause a problem, or hey, maybe I got lucky and it reabsorbed, or sometimes the uterus can kind of reorganize the lining that's in there. So I went in on Tuesday, June 17th, a couple days ago. Today is Thursday. My husband and I went in completely not worried. We were We were going in and expecting to see a growing little bean, and everything was going to be all right. And we go in, and first off, the hemorrhage was gone. The way they explained it to me was the uterus did kind of reorganize the blood in there, and the pocket of blood was no longer there. It was no longer an issue. It went away, which is great. I mean, that does not always happen. Now, the 30% detachment it had caused would have never fixed itself. That would have never repaired that portion of the attachment or lack thereof. There would have never been any nutrients coming through on that particular section. But everything else was fine. And because it was 30%, more than likely everything would have been great. I think they only really worry about not getting enough nourishment as if the detachment is like 50%. And of course, that's definitely impending miscarriage most of the time, not all the time. Kitty, sorry. Where was I? So that was great, but you know, they put the ultrasound wand in there and they're moving it around. They're moving it around, and they're changing the screen. And my RE was doing this. My RE was doing this with a nurse in there and also a student. And then the nurse tried, and now my husband and I are getting nervous because I thought I had heard a heartbeat, but then they told me that that was my heartbeat that I was hearing. No matter what view or what, there's a lot of buttons I'm not familiar with on the ultrasound machines that allow them to hear my heartbeat versus the baby's heartbeat. No matter what they did, they really weren't getting, they couldn't find a heartbeat. So from there they went to measuring, and the previous week when I was in there on Monday, June 9th, I was supposed to be 6 weeks, 4 days. And it was measuring 6 weeks, 2 days. Not a big deal at that stage of the game. A couple days is really not a big ordeal. That can change rapidly. But 8 days later, I should have been 7 weeks, 5 days. And after 8 days, the baby only measured 6 weeks, 5 days. So out of 8 days of what should have been 8 days of growth, it only grew 3. And on top of that, they could not find a heartbeat. So, of course, our hearts just sunk. But, you know, my RE is quite thorough. And he said, you know, whenever this happens, before we do anything or say anything, I want you to go and get a second opinion at the hospital. And I'm going to put a rush on it. I want you to go right now. A lot of times their equipment is more sensitive than ours, and that's all those people do all day long. So, I mean, we knew there was very little hope at that point, but we tried to hang on to it. And we went over there right away. And, you know, a lot of you may or may not remember, a little over a year ago, I had a bladed ovum. So I've been through this before with second opinions and technicians at the hospital and ultrasound technicians, I should say. Most of the time, the ones you get at the hospital, they're pretty jaded. They've seen everything about 100 times. And they're instructed not to tell you much of anything until the report can be analyzed by the head honcho, so to speak. And then it's released to your doctor, and then you get to find out what's going on. The ultrasound tech that I got at my hospital was an older lady. She'd been doing this for quite some time. And she was the sweetest thing. And she let on to probably more than she typically would have, considering the circumstances. So I'm laying there on the table, and the monitor is kind of in front of me, so I can't see the monitor. I can't see what's going on. And she had the sound off, so I couldn't hear anything. But my husband was sitting across the room, and he had a full view of the screen and also what she was typing. And this ultrasound took a little bit longer than your average general ultrasound. They did an external and an internal. And when she got to the internal part, she kept telling me, okay, stop breathing, breathe, hold your breath, okay, breathe, hold your breath. Okay, that went on for a while. And I could, of course, I could feel her trying to move it around, and she was just trying to double and triple and quadruple check everything. She was doing everything in her power to find a heartbeat, and it just wasn't there. Even though I couldn't see the screen or what she was typing, and she was doing her best not to let on anything emotionally, I could tell what she was trying to do just on what she was having me do. And I, of course, had a full view of my husband and his reactions to what she was typing. And about halfway through it, he just put his head in his hands, and if he wasn't sitting in a chair, he probably would have crumbled to the floor. The last time we went through this, he was standing, and he quite literally did crumble to the floor. And that's not something anybody should ever have to see. It's not something anybody ever should have to go through. So after she finished, she left the room to rush the information to the head radiologist to look everything over. And I know that they do a recording of what they're seeing and what they're determining. And while she was out of the room, I got dressed, and my husband said, she just kept typing no FHT, which means no fetal heartbeat. So before she even came back in the room, of course we knew what she was going to say. And she said, I know there's a rush on this. I know you guys came as a second opinion, so you know what's going on. Do you want me to make the call to your doctor while you're in the room? And I said yes. So it was that. So at that point, we had talked to the doctor before going to the second opinion about what to do and what not to do, and if the results were conclusive, what we wanted. And originally I honestly thought about having them give me the medicine and just do a natural miscarriage. And I changed my mind because, if I had started taking the medicine that day, it's not like it's an immediate thing. It could happen fairly quickly, but more than likely it would take a couple of days before it would start kicking in. And it would take a while. It's not always a one-day thing. And I had been off of work on bed rest for 2.5 weeks, and they were going to release me to go back to work And I certainly didn't want that to happen while I was at work. And once you naturally miscarry, I mean, the HSG levels, I'm sorry, the HCG levels could take up to a month, sometimes more, to actually drop down to 0. And we wouldn't be able to have any testing done. Now, the last time I went through this, I was still at the OB level, and the option was not there to do any testing. This time, even though I could have had my OB do a DNC, the RE offered to do it, if that was the route I decided to go. And that is the route I decided to go, partially because, for my own sanity, I just wanted it over with. I needed it over with. And in some ways, of course, there's risks for DNCs. There's risk for every surgery. But for the most part, the risk is minimal. The chances of something going wrong in there is minimal. That really doesn't happen very often. And at least I would know that there wouldn't be any problem with my body not eliminating everything, which would cause even more problems. Plus, my RE told me that regardless of the history and how many miscarriages you've had or have not had, or what stage in the game you are with him, he always sends it out for testing. Or at least that's what he wants to do every time, unless the patient tells them they don't want it. So we did want that. So we went through with the DNC, and the DNC was yesterday morning, Wednesday, June 18th. And it sucked. I said this a long time ago when I went through the first DNC. It's obviously not a fun thing. You go in there knowing that you have an unviable pregnancy, but you come out feeling completely empty. Trying not to put a lot of emotion in this and just get the facts out. And it's hard. Physically, I'm doing okay with the DNC. There was pain. There was some pain yesterday, but that's to be expected with what they've got to go in there and do. But it wasn't that bad. Today is a little bit better. There's still some pain there, but I went to work today because I needed to. I needed to keep my mind busy. And honestly, my workplace has been beyond understanding. Not everybody has that. So I didn't want to take advantage of them. So I went. So now what? Again, I'm trying to skip the emotion, because this video is going to be long enough. So, I'm going to skip to what's next. The results on the testing of the tissue and the placenta and the miscarried baby will not come back for at least 3, possibly 4, slightly more weeks. So, a month. Let's just say a month. It's kind of a long time when you really want an answer. But it's not like we can really do anything or move on for probably a month anyways. I have to go back in 2 weeks for a checkup to make sure everything's okay and to get cleared of all the restrictions I currently have that come along with the DNC. And I have to cycle on my own. We've got to get to a cycle day 1. So we got to wait for AF to show up on its own after the bleeding from the DNC is done. So that alone is figure a month. So while it's a little bit crazy to have to wait that long, I understand why a test like that would take that long to come back, and you're just going to have to be patient. So the question is, what are we going to do with that information? We're not positive. My husband and I have done a lot of small chunks of talking over the last 2 days. We both had a lot of emotions bouncing around up in these heads of ours, so we just needed to do it in small increments, and we started out with the now what. I wish I could say that we had an answer of, if it comes back chromosomal, then we're going to do this, versus if it doesn't come back chromosomal, then we're going to do that. We don't really have that. There's a lot of pros and cons to weigh. Thankfully, we haven't hit a brick wall, so we have options, and that's always a good thing. None of them are easy, but at least we have options. And because I had a blighted ovum, my first loss was a blighted ovum, and most blighted ovums are blamed on chromosomal problems of some variety. And now we had a pregnancy that actually grew normally. That was a really important feat for us to get past. And we had a heartbeat, and the heartbeat stopped. If that comes back chromosomal also, then there's a little fear involved. We do have 3 frosties. We started out with 7. The fresh cycle, we put 2 5AAs in, 5ABs in, which are practically perfect. They're almost perfect, but it's an amazing grade. Neither one of them took. That cycle failed. This first FET, we put in 2 5BBs, which is still a great grade, a little lower than what we started with, but I'm not one to complain for a 5BB. That's a great grade also. One obviously didn't take, and the second one turned into this. So, with a blighted ovum in my past, and now this, and the fact that we did not do PGD testing on these embryos that we have, we're really scared of those 3 frosties. We were throwing around the idea of, if it comes back chromosomal, to not use the 3 frosties. And we brought that up to the doctor, and he understood, and he said if that was the decision we wanted to go with, he would back us. And that his next recommendation ended up being exactly what I would have asked for, is to start with a fresh cycle and include PGD. Not to say that that's not scary too, because if we do have chromosomal issues going on here, man, that's scary. I mean, you start all over again. You got to go through the stemming, pray to God your body responds to it properly, go through the retrieval, pray to God they get some eggs out, pray to God some of them are mature, pray to God that they fertilize, and then hope that they keep growing for, I think it's 4 days, 5 days, at which point they take one cell out of each to do the PGD testing. They all automatically go into a freeze, and you wait for the test results to come back. What if they all come back bad? God, I can't even think. To go through all of that and have nothing. And I know that's the risk all of us take that go through IVF. Many of us don't even get that far. Many of us don't even have the option to try IVF. So I got to try and remember that. But that's still scary. That's scary to go through all that. To have said, hey, we'll start over, we'll do the PGD testing, and hope and hope and hope and hope that there's one or two. One. You only need one, right? One. Just one little guy that is chromosomally okay. That's just, it's scary. So there's that. Or the test on the tissues and the remains. Maybe they'll come back chromosomally okay. It's kind of what I'm hoping for. I really am. But for some reason in the back of my mind, I don't think that's what we're going to get. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Our infertility factors kind of point towards potential chromosomal issues. So that's scary too. All of this is scary. But maybe it won't be chromosomal. Not to say that we don't have those issues. That would just mean that that one was chromosomally okay and something else went wrong. Which would make us feel a little more confident in the fact that the 3 we have left, hey, maybe they're all right. Maybe they're okay, and this was caused by something else. Personally, if it does come back as chromosomally okay, I know what I'm going to believe the issue is. Now, if that's the case, essentially they'll rule it as unknown. So obviously I can't prove this. But I personally believe that if it comes back chromosomally okay, that it's the SCH that caused this. Why? Well, the ultrasound that we got the heartbeat on, the baby measured 6 weeks, 2 days. And 2 days prior to that, we had that scary, scary, scary stuff falling out of me. It's really hard for me to wrap my brain around how things can still be okay when you've got clots the size of your fist falling out of you. And it looked like someone stained my toilet bowl Kool-Aid red for, oh hell, that had to be about 8 to 10 hours that going on. I don't know if I mentioned how long of a time period in my last video it was, but yeah, it was about 8 to 10 hours. And then it just stopped. Cold turkey, like someone turned it off like a switch. It really blows my mind how stuff like that can happen and pregnancies can still be okay. And that does happen. You know, if anybody out there is watching this that is having bleeding problems, please do not take this the wrong way. There's many, many, many occurrences where people bleed through an entire pregnancy. Some women have flat-out periods for half to the whole entire pregnancy. And they're fine. Now, I personally have a really hard time wrapping my brain around that. It doesn't seem logical. Because I'm a very logical thinking kind of person. And they can't really, science can't really give a good reason why sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not. all of that being said, that whole ordeal with me happened right before we had got the measurement of 6 weeks, 2 days with a heartbeat of 106, which was about right for that time period. The following week and even into week 8, there's a lot of growth that happens, and the heartbeat goes way up. Around where I was, 7 weeks, 5 days, the heartbeat should have been around 140. So that tells you how much it goes up in that time period. And when they found no heartbeat, the baby had measured 6 weeks, 5 days. So that tells me it only grown 3 days more. It hung on for a couple days more with all it had. But everything that I had going on with that SCH, maybe it was too much. Maybe it was too much for it to overcome. So if the testing comes back chromosomally okay, that's what I'm personally going to believe caused this. Which would make us feel more comfortable with doing and using those 3 frosties we have versus starting over again. I don't know. I guess we just have to wait. We also talked about the what if factor. That's a rough one. Because regardless of the results of the test, can we ever say, hey, we're not going to use those 3 frosties, and not have that little voice in the back of your head saying, what if? Regardless of the risks, regardless of the chances, regardless of some study out there saying, 1 in a million. What if? You only need one good one, right? I'm not sure either one of us can live with another what if. So if I had to guess right now, and if I had to assume that my doctor will go for this, and I think he might, if we explain all this to him, I think we might just go for it. I explained a bunch of this to a personal friend, and her exact response was, F it, put them all in. You never know. Probably. I could see us potentially doing that, if the doctor will let us put all 3 in. Now, you may or may not recall I wanted to put 3 in this time, and the doctor wouldn't let me because he really believed that this time was going to work, and he didn't want me to end up with multiples or triplets. I don't think they're too worried about twins, but I think triplets really scares them because it's pretty high risk. And I am not the skinniest person in the world, so it's probably even more high risk for me. So technically he was right. It did work. Just didn't stay. So maybe he'll go for that. Maybe he'll let us put all 3 in and hold on to that what if. And if all 3 don't take, then we'll have wasted, 1 IVF cycle, 1 frozen cycle. Month and a half. 2 months with the wait on the D&C. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a whole lot of time. Granted, I don't want to waste any time, but that's not that big of a deal. I think my concern is if this happens again, that's more like 4 to 12 weeks out the window. I won't say wasted. That's still not too horribly bad. Be another emotional toll, but yeah. So there's a lot going on in our brains about where we're going to go to next. I can say, even though our original first responses to what happened were really bad, we're not ready to give up. How many more times are we okay with trying? Over and over and over again? I don't know. I don't know. Only time can answer that. In the day one of us, regardless of whether it's me or my husband, the day one of us says, I can't take it anymore, then that's the day that we'll move on to other options. But for now, even though it hurts like hell, I gotta keep trying. So that's that. And even though I left a lot of the emotion out of this one, believe me, I left a lot of the emotion out of this one, I see this as getting pretty darn long. So that's all I've got. That's where I'm at, and hopefully my body does its thing and gets me back on track. Hopefully those test results tell us what way to go. Like I said, I have a feeling regardless we're gonna not chance that what if. Alright guys, that's it. I'm probably going to also record a vlog concerning all of the goofy stuff bouncing around in my head. I may or may not do that tonight. I don't know. I am sure that vlog will be obscenely long, so I understand if not everybody watches it. I'll be lucky if you guys met me to the end on this one, because I talk too much. But you guys know that. Alright, we'll be okay with time. This sucks. It does. But time heals all, right? Talk to you guys later. Bye.